Hello, everyone. I'm being joined today by Caryn Larrinaga. Most people know her for her series of Donn Hill and the characters of all those three books. But she's recently come out with a shorter work, a novella called Mousetrap that she's going to talk with us about. And then we'll also cover some other things. Hello, Caryn.
Hi.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you first of all, Mousetrap. What would you say is your elevator pitch, your 30-second spot about what is this book about?
So Mousetrap is about a woman named Dakota whose older brother has passed away, and his death has necessitated her to go back to the family's old home in Astoria, Oregon, where a dark presence has been waiting for her to come back for a very long time.
I like that. It's a good way to tie that in. So I have known you for a while, and I know you love horror. You love ghost stories, be
Mm-hmm.
it real or fictionalized. Would you relate to the audience of how you got into horror? I
Oh
think it's a
yeah, I
great
love
story.
talking
That's the
about
reason
how.
why.
Yeah, I blame having really cool parents who also love horror and introduced me to it. My mom loves horror stories. She bought me a lot of horror books. My dad loves horror movies, so he exposed us to a lot of material that probably wasn't exactly age appropriate. Definitely too scary for my young mind. And they let us watch all kinds of stuff that like I think other parents would have been pretty upset about or would have had issues with. They took me to see Interview with a Vampire when it came out in like 1993 or something like that. And I was 9, and people in the theater gave my parents these looks for taking their like little 9-year-old daughter with them. So they just shared a lot of horror content with me. And I think there's something that happens when you consume something with people that you love who make you feel good, that watching or consuming or reading those things also makes you feel good. And that continuing to do that, to listen to that album or watch that movie or read that story, they kind of like resurrect that feeling of feeling good. So,
So they gave horror a positive spin instead of using it
yeah,
just to scare the crap out of you.
I think that was their intention, was especially my dad. My dad to this day likes scaring people. Like if I go to their house and they don't answer, I open the door with my key after a while. And sometimes he does it on purpose. And I have to be on the lookout because around any corner he could be like standing up against a wall, like waiting for me to come around. So his intentions were definitely to frighten us, but
Okay.
jokes
And
on him. I love.
it's you usually like to deal more with the paranormal, the supernatural part of
Yeah,
horror.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because that's what Donn Hill is about, and that's what Mousetrap's about.
Mm-hmm.
Bit different twist of what is it's or a haunting versus a possession, but very much the supernatural in the location. So,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of tying that, I've also heard you say that you love to go because of that. You like to go ghost hunting.
Yes.
Yes. So, what would
Oh,
you one of your
follow up.
favorite?
Okay.
So, what would you say is one of your best experiences as a ghost hunter?
Um, there's a couple favorites that come to mind, and I have been to one of the monkey retreats that the Infinite Monkeys have. And I don't know if you were at this one with me. I feel like you were, but we were up at Echo Lake, and Tara or Anna had brought their dowsing rods, and I had never used the dowsing rods before. And we just went walking around the paths in the farmland up there and near the lake and used the dowsing rods and stopped anywhere that we thought we felt an energy and asked questions. And I feel like we definitely connected with something up there that gave me the heebie-jeebies. Um, I had recently lost my grandmother, and she was and is continually just constantly on my mind. And I feel her presence around me a lot of the time. But at that point of my grief cycle or grief journey, that a cycle it never ends, I hadn't really started to feel her nearby yet. I was just feeling the lack of her. So we were walking around near Echo Lake or Echo Reservoir, using the dowsing rods, and we stopped and connected with something, and Anna was holding them and asking questions. And dowsing rods, typically, if they close, it's yes, and if they open, it's no. And you can ask them to, use the rods to point at various things. And Anna was asking some questions about, like, where are you from? Or like, are you male or female? And it was female. And she asked it, do you want to speak to anyone in the circle? And it said yes. And Anna said, point to who you want to speak to. And the rod swiveled right around to me. And I said, no, I am not touching those, because I was very concerned that whatever it was that was saying, I want to talk to Caryn, could potentially be trying to exploit my grief and my sort of desperation to speak with my grandmother, and might have been using that little crack to open a door and, get into my life somehow. And I don't know if that's what was happening, but I am a very paranoid person. And so I was like, no, I don't want to touch those things. You talk to someone else.
So that brings up an interesting aspect. You're paranoid, you say, but you write paranormal horror. So is that kind of doing your own catharsis or therapy by confronting it on the page?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A lot of the things that I write about are things that I have been afraid were going to happen to me, or things that did happen to me that made me feel afraid. Um, I think that kind of running into and embracing that fear helps me capture it better and write about it. Um, so yeah, I think that it does help me process the things that I'm afraid of a little bit. And I can make bad things happen to people on the page and kind of not feel like that there's bad things are going to happen to me now.
Okay, I'm going to get back to the book now a little bit, because there's one thing. I've written reviews of the Donn Hill series and some other works that you've done here and there. But the one thing I've noticed is you really delve more into creating the personality of your characters versus the horror of the story. Is that kind of tied back to what you're saying right here of what then you can twist the character into, or is it to give those personalities a chance to how to work through those twists? Which is the part that's driving you in your writing?
Um, I think that to really scare somebody and to really hurt somebody, you have to know them really well. I think that we can stab the knife, the metaphorical knife, more deeply into the people that we're closest to, because we know where to hit them and how to twist it. So I think that I just sort of get to know the characters really well, and I want my readers to get to know the characters as well as I do, so that they can appreciate what I'm doing. And yeah, so I definitely do start with characters first. I'll usually start with a person who's typically going through something, and start working out with what they're dealing with. What could be some things that happen to them that force them to confront the things that they're afraid of confronting? Or, how can I make them face their fears? So I think starting with a character first definitely helps me figure out what would scare them, instead of figuring out what scary thing would scare what type of people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's easier for me.
Okay, and then working off the characters. One thing we I think your readers have gotten used to in the past, we didn't see in Mousetrap, was an animal character.
Yeah.
So usually, I know you have a lot of dealings with cats, particularly from Donn Hill, but was that a conscious decision to not include a pet in this one, or is it just kind of worked out that way? What brought that about?
It was something I was worried about when I was pitching this book. I was worried, oh no, there's no animal in it. Like, what are my readers gonna think? There's no cat or dog or bird or anything. But I just didn't feel like there was a place for an animal in this particular story. I think that Mac in Donn Hill, for example, she needed Striker. Like, she had a Striker shaped hole in her life. shaped exactly like a cat silhouette, and so she needed Stryker to help her fill that. Um, and Dakota, there's not space in her life or her story for that. I think that there are other characters in the book that maybe need an animal and didn't have one or had one and they don't anymore. So, but Dakota, it just isn't meant to be for her. And that's a sad reality. Not everyone is an animal person, and that's okay. I personally feel like I couldn't thrive without a bunch of animals.
And that kind of brings back, I know from talking with you before and for earlier, you are involved with like the Cat Writers Association. Is that correct? So
Yes.
I take it they focus on making sure that there's cats in the story or the stories about cats.
Yes, they have a contest called the Communications Contest. And in order to qualify with a fiction work, a cat has to be a big part of the story. You can't just be like, there was a cat in a scene. It has to be key to the plot. But the majority of the members of the Cat Writers Association don't actually write fiction. Many of them are journalists and bloggers, veterinarians who write articles about how to help cats or write nonfiction works about people who, advice for being a pet parent. So the fiction group seems a little bit smaller, but everyone, what they have in common is a deep love for cats. There's an email chain that we are all part of, and people will sometimes just shoot an email that's like, you know what, I just got this amazing toy for my cats, and so everyone should go out and get it because it is amazing. And I got it, and my cats freaked out about it. It's called the Bird. I learned about it from being a member of this cat association.
I think the first time I heard that you were kind of involved with that was when I did a review of the anthology Cat Ladies of the Apocalypse,
Yeah,
which I remember that you were also included in. So
that is one of my favorite anthologies. When I'm at a table at a conference and someone says, which collection of short stories should I start with? I always just sort of like nudge that one in my direction because it is such a great anthology. Amazing stories in that one.
So you had those anthologies and you did the
Mhm.
novels with Donn Hill. So Mousetrap is a little bit of a departure from that because we're looking at a novella. So was that
Yeah.
another conscious decision of why you wanted to go with a novella instead of a full length?
Yes. So there was kind of a challenge that I set for myself based on a call for submissions for novellas specifically. And I had never written a novella, but had been reading a ton of them because I think novellas are becoming more and more popular in the horror space because they are shorter to consume, they can be really focused. So I wanted to try writing one. And so when I was plotting the story, I left out a lot of things that I otherwise would be thinking about. For some of my longer works, there's subplots, there's different characters working on different things. There's the main character is building relationships with a lot of different people and working through stories with all of them. But I was really interested and excited by the concept of writing something that's short enough that you can be just really focused on that one journey with definitely relationships with a bunch of different people, but still just one arc. But still long enough that I could get into the things that I like to, which is developing all of those characters and letting my readers get to know them and get to know the world before all of the bad things really get cooking. So I'm a big fan of them. I think that I'm going to be writing quite a few from now on.
And will you keep working with Timber Ghost Press? Because they're the ones that did this one for you, a new press. Um,
If
that
they will have me.
if they will have you.
Yeah.
So I take it working with Cody at Timber Ghost was a good experience for you. And how did that go about with the working with them in developing a novella?
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to be tabled with Cody at the LTUE conference in Provo. And we were kicking around some ideas for some supernatural horror. and I had an idea for a story. And you've been at conferences, you know how much downtime there can be, especially if it's the kind of conference where there's a bunch of different classes. And so during those classes, the vendor room is a ghost town. And so during those long stretches, you chat, kick around ideas, maybe play some games or whatever. But so we were talking through this concept that I had, and they really helped me develop some ideas for it and pull on a little bit of the threads there. So when I was finished writing it, I asked, hey, would you mind reading my synopsis? Because I'm going to be pitching this book to this other publisher and they'd like a synopsis. And so will you read this over for me because you're familiar with the general concept? And we've kind of critique swapped before. So they read the synopsis and they said, if that other publisher doesn't want it, I want it. So I'm interested. So I'm really happy that it ended up in Timber Ghost's hands because Cody is amazing. They just put so much attention and passion into publishing it. I really felt like Cody is as invested in this story as I am and wanted to make sure that it was the best that it could be with the best cover that it could have and got all the attention that it deserves. So I would absolutely love to work with them again. I'm actually kind of like half plotting a cosmic horror novella that I hope that they might be interested in because that's kind of their jam. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity of working with them on a few different things now and reviewing their works. And I have to agree with you that I have found that working with Cody, even as a reviewer to a publisher, it's a much different style because they're much more willing to give me information about the authors. And
Yeah.
because they know the authors instead of going, oh, that's one of our authors. Yeah. So I think it's a very good relationship there. Are there any other organizations besides the Cat Writers and Timber Ghost that you would like to say that you work with and kind of give a shout out to for the help that they've done for you? Or
Oh yeah, for sure. The League of Utah Writers, if anyone's local to Utah, that's one of that group I think has had the largest impact on my career from any other. Just in terms of helping me even decide which publishing paths I wanted to explore and connecting me with resources for taking those journeys. So League of Utah Writers is awesome. Their conferences are amazing. And let's see. Oh, the Horror Writers Association is also great. And in different ways. The League of Utah Writers is close to home. They're here. I know my chapter members personally. The Horror Writers Association, we have a local chapter here, and that group is amazing too. But the HWA also has this larger umbrella organization that's international, and it's been really great to connect with horror writers in other parts of the world through them. And they also put on a phenomenal conference. So I love conventions.
I'm going to give a little bit of a different plug for the League of Utah Writers. One of the things that, like you mentioned, if you're local to Utah, but what's happened since the pandemic with so many things going online, there's now a lot of members in our league that are not local. It's like we've had people in our chapter show up on our Zoom meetings from Alaska and from clear across the other side of the state. We had someone that called in from Florida. So it's like,
That's awesome.
it's really one of those things you don't have to be local anymore to be involved. So if it's something people are interested, please check us out. I'm a chapter president, and now I wasn't at the time, but when you're talking about the writing retreat with the Infinite Monkeys, that's who we are, the Infinite Monkeys genre. I am now the chapter president of that, thus the monkeys.
Yeah.
So you said you want to continue writing novellas, and we know that you've probably got a lot of short stories out and about working differently. What can we expect to see from you in like the near future in terms of writing projects?
Well, what I'm working on right now, you mentioned my Donn Hill series, and I talked a little bit about Mac, the main character, and her cat Striker. So what I'm working on right now is a trilogy of companion novellas. The Donn Hill series is all novels, and what I'm working on now are the same time period, but through the point of view of Stryker, Mac's cat, and what she was up to during all the time that Max was asleep, because cats are nocturnal, and Stryker is an indoor-outdoor cat, so she goes out and roams around and gets involved with her own mystery solving that's concurrent to, but different from the murder mysteries that Mac is working on. And I love that cat. So it's been really fun to get back into the world of Donn Hill and be connecting Stryker to animals that are connected to other people in that universe. So hopefully, I don't know if any of those will come out in 2023, but I'd sure like it if they did. So that's what's coming out next.
So I know I approached you once earlier before, and I'm still working on this. We're trying to put together a panel of horror experts for FanX. So I'm going to pitch that a little bit, just real quick. We've got Caryn and Cody and Johnny Worthen as authors, and I think I have a game designer now lined up. I'm not going to say anything until I know for sure. A screenwriter in terms of Michael Klug is someone I've met, and the director of Film Quest, who is also a director and writer, Jonathan Michael. So we're all going to try to pull together this group at FanX, if you're in the area for that one, to discuss H.P. Lovecraft's effect on modern day horror telling. So that would fit into like what you're saying with the cosmic horror. But besides FanX, in 2023, where else can people look to meet up with you and get a chance for you to sign their books?
Well, most of the things on my calendar right now are teaching. I will be teaching a workshop at the Prequel conference on April this year. April, the other A month. April 29th, I think it is.
Just
I'll be
a couple
teaching
weeks out.
So just a couple weeks away. I'll be teaching on the principles of editing for any writers who want to do some in-depth self-editing before sending it off to query or what have you. At the Quill conference in August, that's the other A month, I have been pitching some things, and I believe I will be teaching there. Definitely going to FanX in September.
Yep.
I think
that's September.
And then I can't guarantee that I'll be there, but I am hoping to be at CatCon in it's in the LA area, August 4th and 5th, or 5th and 6th, somewhere in there, early August. I've never been to CatCon before, but I am jazzed.
A different type of horror setting, I take
it. Yeah.
Okay, so we've been going for about 15 minutes, right around there. So I've dealing with a novella, there's not a lot. We've talked about the others. I'm going to put up links to some of the reviews on here so people can follow up on those and where to get your books. Is there anything in particular you would like to share about your writing, of what you enjoy about it?
It just feels good, but sometimes I hate it. Like when it's hard, I hate it. One thing that I like about writing is discovering the kind of music that can put me in a groove. I don't know if you listen to any music services like Spotify or Apple Music or anything like that, where at the end of the year they tell you which albums you listen to the most. But while I was writing Mousetrap and another book in 2022, I kept writing to an album called Trilogy by Carpenter Brute that I think might be one of the greatest albums of all time. And at the end of the year, when Apple said, "Hey, here's all the albums that you listened to," I had listened to that album 1,700 times in a year. I was listening to it like 4 times a day. It was just on repeat while I was writing. So I just like that it can be so immersive that if you get the right music and the right project, and you can just lose yourself in it to the point where you don't realize that you have listened to that album like 4 times in a row. But I like how it can really just suck me in, and it's a great stress reliever for me, but stress does make it harder to get into it. It's like going to the gym, like I don't want to go. I'll feel better when I'm done there, but I don't want to go. And sometimes with writing, I'm like, I don't want to. I want to sit and I want to feel bad for myself and I want to eat a bunch of candy and like watch a sitcom for the 30th time, which I will still do, but I'll feel much better about doing it after I've been writing for a little bit. So it feels good. It makes me feel good. It's nice having kind of a tangible thing after to see the book be done, or to hear from readers that they enjoyed something or that they really love one of my characters. So I feel like it's kind of a double win. Like it makes me feel good to do it. Seeing the results makes me feel good. So it's kind of an upper.
Okay. So the final question I have for you then, and I usually ask this of all the experienced writers, and since I mean, like you are a Dragon Con nominee, and so forth, I fear you've got some experience behind you, and you do some teaching. So when you're approached by a new writer and they say, "What advice can you give them?"
Mm.
What is something that you can tell new writers that will help them in their career as they move forward?
It's the question that you should always expect, but you're never prepared for. There's a lot of good advice that I've gotten over the years. Brian Young, the president of the League of Utah Writers, would say that building a habit is really important. Writing something every day, no matter how little, just to keep your brain in that kind of like churn writing mode. I think for me, it's been about training my brain. So I guess I would encourage newer writers to train themselves a little bit, the way that you might train an animal. But if there's a space that you can make in your home or outside of your home that can be your writing spot, if there's music that you can make your writing soundtrack, if there's a time of day or a flavor of tea or anything like that that you can connect to your writing experience, and start training yourself that when I'm sitting on my blue couch and Carpenter Brut is playing again and I'm drinking chai, then I'm going to be producing now, because there is a little bit of a psychological component to it. But I would say as well to just be proud of yourself for taking any step forward. It can be a really long journey, and sometimes it can be a little bit discouraging if someone else in your sphere has just gotten a book deal or their book just became a bestseller and you're still plugging along on your very first project. Sometimes I, in the past, have felt really discouraged, like, why isn't that me yet? And so I think just to keep pushing and moving, because a lot of people say that they want to be a writer. But to quote Throw Mama from the Train, a writer writes. So if you're writing anything, then you are a writer, and just keep pushing along until you've got something that you're excited about. You find the right project, you find the right rhythm, and then you can eventually have something that you're proud of and excited about.
Okay. So before we sign off, is there anything else that you would like to include in this chat that we're having?
Yeah. I guess I would just plug myself. You can
Good.
find my books online at everywhere. You can find me at carynlarrinaga.com. You can pick up a free short story by subscribing to my newsletter. And yeah, I hope that you'll check out my work, check out other books by Timber Ghost. Am I forgetting to plug myself in any way? I think that's it. If you're on social media, I am on Book Talk, and that's about it. I'm very bad at all other social medias.
I understand. I try to be, and I'm getting better. Okay, well, thank you for joining me in this discussion and chatting about you and your work. So just remember, this is
Thank
what
you.
Mousetrap looks like. And like you said, it's available pretty much everywhere. from Timber Ghost Press. I will add in a link to the review I wrote into the notes of this. And if you like these chats that we're doing, please subscribe. It's helping me to kind of reach out and get more and more people lined up. So thank you, Caryn. Best of luck in everything that's coming up. And we hope to see some more from you soon.
Thanks so much, Dan. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.